Picture this. You're commanding the most advanced naval force the world has ever seen. Your ships are technological marvels. Your fleet is massive. Victory seems certain. And then you destroy it all yourself. This isn't fiction. This happened 3 times in Chinese history. 3 of the most powerful fleets in history weren't sunk by enemy cannons. One collapsed with its empire, another was shattered by typhoons worsened by bad planning, and the last, it was deliberately dismantled by its own government. Today, we're diving into the incredible story of how China built the world's most advanced fleets and then deliberately sank them. Before we get into these 3 fleets, you need to understand something. Ancient China wasn't just advanced on land, they dominated the seas too. While Europe was still figuring out basic navigation, Chinese engineers were building ships with watertight compartments. They had gunpowder weapons on their decks. They used compasses and detailed charts. Some records describe ships up to 400 feet long, far bigger than anything Columbus sailed. But modern historians debate those numbers. What's not in doubt? These were among the largest wooden ships the world had ever seen. But here's the twist. Each time China built these incredible fleets, they made a choice that changed history forever. They destroyed them. Not in battle, not by accident, by choice. We're talking about the Song Dynasty Navy, the Yuan invasion fleets, and the Ming Treasure Fleet. 3 different eras, 3 different reasons, but the same shocking result. Let's start with the first fleet that sank itself. Number 1, the Song Dynasty Navy. The Song Dynasty ruled China from 960 to 1279. And they did something no Chinese dynasty had done before. They built a permanent navy. In 1132, the Song court created a dedicated naval command office. They started with about 3,000 sailors, but this force grew fast. By the peak of their power, they had over 50,000 naval personnel. These weren't just fishermen with weapons. The Song built dozens of shipyards across their territory. These yards produced thousands of naval vessels. We're talking about an industrial-scale operation. The Song ships were engineering masterpieces. A typical warship was about 34 meters long and 8 meters wide. They called these White Falcons. Each one carried around 108 soldiers plus 42 sailors. But here's what made them special. They had watertight bulkhead compartments. If one section got damaged, the ship wouldn't sink. This technology wouldn't appear in European ships for centuries. And the weapons? The Song had true gunpowder formulas. Their military manual from 1044 describes catapult-launched gunpowder bombs. They had flamethrowers called fire lancers. They even fitted some ships with iron plating by 1203. One Song engineer built a ship with 11 paddle wheels per side. Imagine that, a paddle wheel warship in the 12th century. These technological advantages paid off. The Song Navy won major battles against their enemies. At the Battle of Kaixi in 1161, Song warships used gunpowder weapons to defeat Jin invaders. Later sources brag about huge numbers, but modern estimates put the Song force at tens of thousands of troops rather than 100,000. The Song controlled the rivers and coasts. Their navy dominated the rivers and coasts for over a century. It was advanced, formidable, and the only thing standing between China and Mongol conquest from the sea. But then came the Mongols. By the 1270s, the Mongol Empire was closing in. The Song fought desperately. They sent 100,000 more naval troops to reinforce Xiangyang in 1271. But the land war was already lost. In 1279, the Song dynasty fell. And here's where the first self-sinking happened. The Song didn't just lose their navy in battle. When the dynasty collapsed, the entire naval system disappeared. The technology, the shipyards, the knowledge, all of it was abandoned. The Mongols, who conquered China, they were land warriors first. They did seize Song ships, shipyards and sailors, and used them in their own fleets, including the later invasion attempts on Japan. But they never made naval power the heart of their strategy. China went from having the world's most advanced navy to losing much of that organized naval system. The shipyards, doctrines, and experience that had made the Song Navy so formidable stopped being developed and passed on. Number 2. The Yuan invasion fleets. Now let's talk about the second fleet. The Mongols inherited Song naval technology, ships, shipwrights, and sailors, and tried to bolt that onto an empire run by cavalry generals with big plans for the seas. Kublai Khan ruled the Yuan dynasty from 1271 to 1294, and he had his eyes on Japan. The problem? Japan was an island. The Mongols needed a navy, so they built one. Actually, they built two. The first invasion fleet, 1274. In 1274, Kublai assembled around 900 ships. These carried about 40,000 Mongol, Chinese, and Korean troops. This wasn't just a raid, this was a full invasion force. The fleet carried gunpowder bombs and incendiary weapons adopted from the Song, centuries ahead of European naval firepower. For 1274, this was cutting-edge military technology. But here's the problem. The Mongols were land warriors. They didn't understand the sea. The 1274 invasion reached Japan. The Mongols landed and fought the Japanese. But then something happened that changed everything. A storm hit, the typhoon sank about 200 ships and drowned around 13,000 troops. The surviving Mongols retreated. The Japanese called this storm the Divine Wind, kamikaze. The second invasion fleet, 1281. Kublai Khan wasn't giving up. In 1281, he assembled an even bigger fleet. Some sources say 4,400 ships with 140,000 men. Others estimate around 4,000 ships. Either way, this was massive. This time, the fleet was split into two groups. One sailed from Korea, one from southern China. They planned to meet off Japan and launch a coordinated attack. The 1281 invasion was even more catastrophic than the first. On August 15, 1281, another massive typhoon struck. This storm was worse than the first. It destroyed virtually the entire fleet. About half of the 140,000 men drowned. Only a few hundred ships survived. The rest were smashed against the Japanese coast or sunk in deep water. Now, you might ask, how is this self-destruction? The storms were natural disasters, right? Here's the thing. The Mongols made choices that doomed their fleets. First, they rushed construction. Many ships were built quickly with inexperienced crews. Chinese and Japanese sources note that the fleet quality was poor. Second, they ignored weather patterns. Local sailors knew about typhoon season. The Mongols launched their invasions at the worst possible time. Third, they split their forces. Instead of one coordinated attack, they had two separate fleets that couldn't support each other. The Mongols had the resources to build incredible fleets. Their strategic choices, rushed construction, split forces, bad timing, meant that when the typhoons hit, the losses were total. After 1281, Kublai Khan never tried to invade Japan again. The Yuan dynasty had effectively wrecked its own naval ambitions through poor planning and catastrophic bad luck with the weather. Part 3. The Ming Treasure Fleet. Now we come to the most incredible fleet of all, the Ming Treasure Fleet. In 1402, Emperor Yongle came to power, and he had a vision. China would project its power across the oceans. They would show the world Chinese superiority. So they built one of the largest fleets human history had seen up to that point. The man in charge was Admiral Zheng He. Between 1405 and 1433, he led 7 massive expeditions. These weren't just trading missions, they were displays of Chinese power. The 1405 expedition alone had 317 ships and about 28,000 men. Think about that scale. This was bigger than most armies. The flagship vessels were called treasure ships, and they were enormous. Chinese sources claim these ships were 100 to 140 meters long, with 9 masts and 12 sails. Some historians doubt these exact numbers, but archaeological evidence supports very large ships. In 1957, archaeologists found a 36.3-foot rudder in Nanjing. This suggests ships of extraordinary size. Whatever the exact numbers, these were among the largest wooden vessels ever built. These weren't just big. They were technological marvels. They had watertight bulkheads, advanced rudder systems, and bronze cannons. The treasure ships were equipped with bronze cannons for defense, possibly dozens, but the exact numbers remain uncertain. Zheng He's fleets reached Southeast Asia, India, the Persian Gulf, and East Africa. By 1419, Chinese ships had reached Malindi on Africa's east coast. These expeditions brought back tribute from dozens of kingdoms. They established Chinese diplomatic relations across the Indian Ocean. China was becoming a global maritime power. But then, in 1433, everything stopped. Emperor Yongle died in 1424. The new court was dominated by Confucian ministers who opposed the expeditions. They saw the voyages as wasteful and unnecessary. By 1435, the Ming court made a shocking decision. They ordered the scrapping of the treasure ships. They confiscated voyage records, labelled them exaggerations, and imposed strict controls on overseas trade, effectively ending China's age of exploration. This policy was called the Siban, Haijin in Chinese. This wasn't gradual decline. This was deliberate destruction. The Ming had the most advanced fleet in the world. They had global reach. They had technological superiority, and they threw it all away. They halted construction of the massive long-range vessels used in the treasure voyages. Some shipyards pivoted to smaller coastal defence ships, but the age of deep-sea expeditions was over. Sailors were reassigned to land duties. Within decades, China went from global naval dominance to a heavily restricted, inward-looking maritime policy. Here's what makes this so significant. When the Ming destroyed their fleet, they left a power vacuum. Within decades, Portuguese and Spanish explorers began their own oceanic expeditions. Europeans filled the gap that China had abandoned. Some scholars wonder, had Zheng He's voyages continued, could the age of exploration have been led by Chinese admirals instead of European captains? 3 different reasons, same result. So we have 3 fleets, 3 different reasons for their destruction. The Song Navy disappeared because the dynasty fell, and the Mongols didn't value naval technology. The Yuan fleets were destroyed by poor strategic choices that turned natural disasters into complete catastrophes. The Ming Treasure Fleet was deliberately scrapped by a court that saw naval power as unnecessary. But the result was always the same. China lost its naval dominance. Each time China destroyed a fleet, they lost more than ships. They lost knowledge. The Song innovations in gunpowder weapons and ship design were forgotten. The Yuan never learned from their strategic mistakes. The Ming threw away centuries of navigational expertise. Meanwhile, other civilizations were learning. The Japanese learned about typhoons and coastal defense. Europeans eventually learned about ocean navigation and global trade. Think about the alternative history. What if the Song naval technology had been preserved? What if the Yuan had learned from their failures? What if the Ming had continued their expeditions? China might have maintained naval dominance for centuries. The Indian Ocean could have remained a Chinese lake. Some historians even speculate that the age of exploration could have been led by Chinese admirals, not European captains. Modern lessons. These stories teach us about the importance of strategic continuity. Military and technological advantages don't maintain themselves. They require consistent investment and institutional memory. The Song, Yuan and Ming all made choices that prioritized short-term concerns over long-term strategic advantage. Innovation versus tradition. There's also a lesson about innovation versus tradition. The Song were innovators who pushed naval technology forward. The Ming achieved incredible feats of engineering and navigation. But in each case, traditional thinking eventually won out. The Mongols preferred land warfare. The Ming court preferred isolation. Finally, these stories show the cost of isolation. When China turned inward, other powers filled the vacuum. The decision to abandon naval power had consequences that lasted for centuries. So there you have it, 3 of the most advanced fleets in history. The Song Dynasty Navy, with its gunpowder weapons and paddle wheel ships. The Yuan invasion fleets with their massive scale and captured technology. The Ming Treasure Fleet with flagships probably among the largest wooden ships the world had ever seen, sailing long before Europe's great oceanic empires. All of them destroyed not by enemy action, but by their own choices. Each time, China went from naval dominance to naval weakness in just a few years. And each time, other powers eventually filled the gap. These aren't just stories about ancient fleets. They're lessons about how quickly strategic advantages can be lost, how institutional knowledge can disappear, and how the choices we make about military technology and strategy can echo through history. The next time you hear about an unsinkable fleet or an unbeatable military force, remember these 3 Chinese fleets. Sometimes the greatest threat to naval power isn't the enemy across the water. Sometimes it's the decisions made in your own capital.